Hi, my name is Carey Spaulding, and I plan to speak with you tonight regarding religion in schools. First, I would like to thank the board for allowing me to present at tonight's meeting. Recently, I was approached by some members of the board who asked me to review our policies as they pertain to religion, so that if we're challenged regarding these policies, we will be prepared. So, the purpose of me speaking with you tonight is to review laws and policies on religion as it relates to schools. Please note that this presentation is based on facts and does not reflect personal bias. In reviewing an article from Pew Research Center, I noted that the establishment and free exercise clauses state that Congress must refrain from creating laws establishing a religion. It also states that Congress must refrain from creating laws that would disallow the exercise of religion. Pew Research Center also mentions the case Engel versus Vitale, 1962. In this case, it was found that schools cannot hold school-sponsored prayer, sectarian or non-sectarian. They go on to state that the Supreme Court has pushed forward from banning organized Bible reading for religious and moral instruction in 1963 to prohibiting school-sponsored prayers at high school football games in 2000. In Lee v. Wiseman, 1992, prayer at commencement was viewed as students being forced to participate in a religious ceremony, thus deemed unconstitutional. This was also found on the Pew Research Center article. In looking at these amendments, I also found it important to further look up laws regarding religion and education. So let's look at the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. I found this on the U.S. Department of Education. They mention that schools have to communicate to the state in writing that they do not have a policy that would deny the right of a student to pray in school as outlined in the Constitution. I also found that on the U.S. Department of Education article that religious expression often has questions that come into play regarding the Establishment Clause and the freedom of speech. So let's look at the Establishment Clause. Under this clause, government speech is prohibited from endorsing religion. Public educators cannot lead students in religious activities, including prayer. Speakers must not be selected on religious grounds, which are partial to religious speech. Public educators cannot encourage or discourage students from prayer. Moments of silence should be done without encouraging or discouraging prayer. And if a school allows its facilities to be used for private reasons, they must also allow the same for religious reasons, such as a baccalaureate. So now let's look at the freedom of speech. It states that private citizens are protected when endorsing religion. Something important to note here is that when we're teaching, we're not acting as private citizens, we're public educators. So it's a little bit different. So let's look more at the freedom of speech. Students may pray before, during, or after school. Students may pray with other students as long as they do so under the same terms and conditions as other permissible conversations. Students may speak preferably about a religion, and they may engage in coercive conversation regarding a religion. Students may express their religious views on classroom assignments without penalty or discrimination. And public educators may take part in religious activities with other teachers during duty-free times, such as before, after school, or during their lunch times, things like that. So now let's look at curriculum, dress code, and attendance. So religious materials may be distributed by students on the same terms as they are allowed to distribute other non-religious materials. Public schools may not teach religion, but they may teach about religion without bias. Dress codes should not target specific religions and should be enforced without bias. Attendance exceptions should be made without discrimination. So now let's look at the Equal Access Act. Student groups are allowed equal access regardless of religion. This includes prayers, readings, worship, advertisement. Open forums are included and reference non-instructional times such as before and after school, lunch, and preferred activity times. U.S. Department of Education also noted that leadership within student religious organizations may be subjected to selection based on the views of the religious group. For instance, if they were electing a president of their student religious organization, they may make a requirement that the student has to believe in the religion or practice the religion if they want to be the president of that organization. So, in an attempt to create a non-biased presentation for you today, I also considered the current administration in the U.S. NPR Radio Kansas mentions some recent messages from Trump. He has stated that he wants the complaint process to be smoother when schools fail to follow laws regarding religious prayer in school. He's also said that he supports a school football coach who was fired for continuing to hold prayers prior to games. In conclusion, I think it's important that if we move forward and review board policies, I think it is important to consider curriculum, prayer, and student and employee rights. Those are things that came up frequently in my research on religion in schools. So I think that those would be important topics to review to see if we have them in our policies and if they need to be addressed. So here are my references. I wanted to share those with you today as well. So please feel free to review any of these references or ask me if you have any questions. Thank you for allowing me to speak at today's meeting.